forgive me, I haven't read it in a while. So here goes. My long, sad story. I own many video game consoles because I fancy myself somewhat of a collector.
Oh, thank God.
My living room always sports the most current consoles plus a ton more. While my bedroom is usually equipped with consoles that would be redundant to have in the living room. For instance, no sense in having a PS2 and PS1 in the living room. May as well move the PS1 out to the bedroom. When the 8th generation of consoles came about, Wii U, Xbox One, PS4, I knew I'd be in trouble. You see, because of my living room setup and my refusal to shed functionality from its entertainment center, there is a huge demand for power outlets. Therein lies the issue. The surge protector that has been behind my living room entertainment center for years. At the time of its purchase, it was the largest they made. Them. It had a total of 12 outlets. Now, I don't know. I know what you're thinking. Surely that they must have been making bigger ones than that. No, they didn't. Trust me, I looked. Power strips, yes. Surge protectors, no. Now, you may be wondering what the hell the difference is. Read a book. Anyway, what was I? Oh, yeah. So, when the net worth of your video game-related electronics is upwards of over $10,000, the last thing on earth you want to risk is a power surge destroying your beloved property. And before you say, that almost never happens, I agree. It doesn't. But years ago, I had an LCD HD TV in my living room, and a power surge messed it up in a way that couldn't be salvaged. I ended up selling the defective thing for $50. I bought it for $400. It was a bad time for me to need a TV too, working for McDonald's, supporting myself and someone else. Since then, I have been very careful about leaving my stuff vulnerable to damage. Lulz, the irony. You'll find out what I mean in a bit. Anyway, I bought a Wii U on launch day. My plan was to get a PS4 at some point afterwards, sometime this year. However, a quick head count of my power outlets was coming up short for the 2 remaining consoles to be added. So my solution was to remove the need for one outlet by transferring functionality to another system. To be more precise, I was going to buy an original model PS3, the big heavy ones that can play PS2 games as well as PS1, and replace my current PS3 with it. This would allow me to remove the PS2 from my living room, and this was not destined to be. I swear, things get horrifyingly depressing from this point on, so if you get easily offended by foul language, I recommend that you stop. Okay, so before I could get myself a PS4, I wanted to get the PS3 plan it out, the PS3 plan out of the way. So I went to a game store in town, and I've been frequenting over a decade, and I asked them to have one of their stores ship me one of the original model PS3s to their location. They said that they'd call me when it arrives. Here's where it begins. 2 weeks later. 2 weeks go by, and I go back to the store. Where's my system? They were just as pissed as I was. The store flaked out on them, so we tried again. We called them up. I came back 2 weeks later to pick it up. Upon opening the box, I found out that this other store shipped the wrong goddamn model. It wasn't backwards compatible at all. I mean, seriously, simple instructions. I stood right there while they said the one with the 4 USB ports. Morons. Sadly, this is easily the least of my problems with this story. Finally, June 2016 rolls around, and they finally get it. I pay for it, take it home, and now this is the point where that I realize that the whole process of getting my game save data from one system to the other would be a pain in the ass and super time consuming. So I decided to put it off for a while. I'm like, nah, I'll wait until the end of the return policy window. December comes, and I am well past that return window. The stupid thing is in the closet, unopened, and hasn't been touched. So it was still in the shopping bag too. Like, really, Merce? You couldn't be bothered at all? No, I couldn't. Anyway, I figure maybe it's time to give this thing a shot. I'm not getting any younger. So for those of you who don't know, you can't simply pull the hard drive out of the PS3 system and slide it into another one. That'd leave an opening for piracy and junk. So instead, Sony sets it up in this simple but pain-in-the-ass system where you have to do what's called a data transfer. What you do is you hook up 2 PS3 systems to each other via an Ethernet cord directly. It will then transfer all the data for you. For those of you who don't know, I own a metric fuck ton of games, both digital and physical. I needed to upgrade my PS3 hard drive to 500 gigabytes years ago, just to hold it all. So I started the process. Okay, so I tried starting the process. No dice. There was a totally unnecessary step thrown in, just for my situation. Turns out, one does not simply transfer 150 gigabytes of data. Yes, even though you intend to only keep one of the consoles, you must have the hard drive in the receiving system that's big enough to hold the data from the original one. Makes sense, I guess. Just a pain in the ass, because I only needed one system and one hard drive. Anywho, I didn't have one in the house. The only place that would possibly have an internal 2.5-inch hard drive near me was a local computer store that closes at 8 p.m. It was 7:45. I gave them a call and asked, and thanked my lucky stars, that they said they had the perfect 500 gigabyte hard drive for me. I raced down there and threw like 50 bucks down for this thing, drove back, and began the transfer. So this is a weekend-long process. I'm not kidding. Took days. Not only did I have to transfer it all, but I also had to do a backup once the transfer was complete. I had to do this in order to replace all the newly bought hard drive with the original one that I was using in the other system. So in other words, I wanted to take the hard drive out of the old system and put it in the new one because I trusted it because it treated me so well over the years. And, you know, get rid of that temporary one. The only way I could do that was to do a backup of the dummy hard drive and replace it with the system restore. Why use an old worn-out hard drive from in my new system? Well, because the new system was 7,200 RPM, which is fine. But the slight boost in loading speed is not worth the slightly increased risk of system overheat. So this was another 5-hour process, eating up the rest of my weekend. Anywho, it was done. I finally got out of my hair. Now, it occurred to me that maybe I should test the new system for issues. I mean, I was well past the return date. I was like, wouldn't it just be my luck if the stupid thing didn't play PS2 games? I laughed for a second, and then a chill ran down my spine. I instantly grabbed one of my PS2 games from my collection and threw it in the console. Much to my surprise, it worked fine. I breathed a sigh of relief, put the new system on its shelf in the entertainment center, where my old model used to sit. Content with my situation, I began making plans to sell the old PS3. It too was a fat model, but it only played PS3 and PS1 games. But it was 3rd generation, which means it couldn't, yeah, okay, I already went past that part. I had bought it used 7 years ago, and it served me perfectly without any issues for those 7 years. I had it in an enclosed space, and it purred like a kitten, never overheated, never had any issues whatsoever. The only exception was that the first time I ever replaced the hard drive, I had this bitchin' difficult time getting one of the stupid screws out. And I ended up bending one side of the metal plate that holds the hard drive while trying to pry it loose. As a result, whenever I had to slide the hard drive back in, it kind of scraped against the insides of the system. Problem that probably was to blame for the tragic ending of this story, but I have no way to verify that. I'm getting ahead of myself. I was getting a buyer lined up when one day I was invited to play GTA 5 online with someone. I shrugged and was like, sure. I sat down, turned on the system, threw in the disc, and nothing. The disc wouldn't even appear on the menu. My exact words were, oh, I swear to Allah, I will blow this house up. So after spending half an hour troubleshooting to find out the exact nature of my problem, I discovered that the system would play PS2 games, DVD-based, but wasn't working for PS3 games, Blu-ray-based. In what was soon to become a routine pattern, I brought the system in for a diagnostic from that same local computer store as before. The Blu-ray drive was shot and needed to be replaced. $80 later, I had a PS3 that did what it was fucking designed to do. I decided to test it a little more thoroughly. While testing, I happened upon another concern. After about 5 minutes, the fans of the system would kick in, and this thing got fucking loud. I mean loud. The people on the internet sometimes describe it as a jet engine taking off, and the sad thing is they're not exaggerating at all. Or rather, all that much anyway. It's unbearable. I did a ton of research to figure out what to do. When I was at work the next day, I gave one of my coworker buddies a call. He spends a lot of his spare time buying arcade cabinets, fixing them, and flipping them for a profit. He also does a lot of work with other gaming hardware, so I asked if he could take a look at my PS3 model and replace the thermal paste on the processor. He said sure. So I came back the next day and gave it to him so he could take it over the weekend. Tuesday comes, he forgot to bring it out on Monday, and he hands me my baby back, my baby behemoth. That'll be $60, he said. I wasn't really expecting to have to pay, but I knew it was possible he asked. So for those of you keeping score at home, I've now invested an additional $190 into a 10-year-old model PS3, which I bought for $100, and we're not even done yet. So I get the bad boy home and flip it on for another routine test. This was getting agitating to say the least. It was noticeably more resistant to heat, but it took no longer than 10 minutes before the damn thing was back up to my insides feel like hell on earth mode. Just as loud as before, but with a longer buildup. I asked the guy the next day if he saw anything else in the system that had any red flags. He said aside from the shitty thermal paste, nothing. So I was left on my own to solve this issue. I did some digging to learn as much as I could about the inside of how PS3 worked. My research yielded something useful. Turns out, it is widely believed that the internal power supply in the second and third generation PS3s draws more power than it needs, leading to an unnecessary heat buildup. The first generation PS3s had cooler power supplies, with better fans than the second generation model. After finding out what it would take to replace both, I found out that the fan replacement would be costly and it ran the risk of making the system even louder. I quickly taught myself how to open the PS3, remove the power supply, and then jumped to the internet to order a first generation part to replace it with. That set me back another $35. Now, keep in mind, I am rigorously troubleshooting this system each and every time to make sure that there isn't any way I can avoid spending money. There is literally no way. A week later, I get it in the mail and install it. Sure enough, you know by now, I'm gonna test the son of a bitch. I did, and there was virtually no change in the heat or noise. I was about done with this shit. While troubleshooting, I also tripped over another problem. For some reason, I couldn't turn the damn thing on remotely with a controller. It needed to be manually powered on. That issue might have been newly developed, or might have been there since the start. I hadn't noticed till then. I honestly didn't give a flying shit at this point anymore. It was just one more thing on my laundry list of reasons why I was ready to kill myself. Now, any normal person would have long since given up by now. They would have tapped out on the wrestling mat and said, "I surrender, life. You win. Good game." But no, not me. Truth is, we're just getting started, boys and girls. I did a lifetime's worth more research into the issue. My only solutions were costly and risky as fuck. In a desperate attempt to jerry-rig my heat management problems, I began shopping online for a desk fan. You know, the ones that are powered with a USB. Side note, I attempted to use my laptop cooling fan in dozens of ways, and if anything, the lifted height of the system made it hotter in my entertainment center. It was hard as hell, but I found a store 40 minutes away in the middle of winter that was carrying them. I drove all the way down there, slapped down a $10 bill on the counter, and drove all the way home, where I spent the next 3 hours trying different ways and positions of the system and plug in the fan to assist in cooling. The only configuration that I found that worked was ugly as hell and stuck out of my entertainment center like a sore thumb. So I bring the fucking thing back to my local computer store and asked them to take one last diagnostic look at it. They came back and said everything was perfectly fine, but the Bluetooth component was damaged, and that was the reason why the remote power wasn't working. It's a motherboard issue, so it's a permanent defect. This wasn't a deal breaker for me, but what about that heating issue? I had a fat PS3 before this. It never came close to the nightmare that this thing was giving me. The store owner basically explained to me that what I already suspected to be true. The fat metal PS3s are different in components, but basically the same in size. The one that I'd been working on was more densely packed with shit, making it harder to cool itself off. The thing was basically designed to be out in the open, sitting on a table, or open air, or at all times, with no wall behind it. I don't think I'm an unreasonable consumer, maybe I am, you be the judge, but the idea of you must pull your PS3 out of your entertainment center and place it on the table anytime you want to play it kind of makes me throw up in my mouth a little. Not only because it it defeats the purpose of an entertainment center and looks like an eyesore, but also because it means that laying cables out for people to trip over. I was done. Finished. I gave up. I'd rather have a quiet, functional system than one that will let me play Gen 6 games, but then wake up the neighbors in the process. So I prepared my good old trusty 3rd gen PS3 model with the other 500GB hard drive so that I could reverse the data transfer. Oh no, God had me on his shit list and he wasn't nearly done with me yet. I was firmly in his fucking crosshairs and there was nothing I could do about it. Papa Sony told me to put the latest firmware on a flash drive and insert it into the system and then do a complete system reformat on the receiving system. So I did. The process was taking a while, longer than expected. At about 25% loading progress, I moseyed on over to the kitchen to stuff my face with comfort food. It only took a couple minutes, and then I popped my head back in the living room, and the damn thing was already done. Boom, from 25 to 100, just like that. But there was a problem. The screen was black. Why was the fucking screen black? I waited several long minutes staring intently at the screen, hoping that I was just conditioned to assume the worst at this point. Surely it was just taking a sec to reboot to get things in order, right? Right? I waited and waited to no avail. My screen was channeling its inner Henry Ford and saying you can have any color you want as long as it's black. Before touching anything, I did my freaking 400th Google search since the start of this story. Turns out there was another man who had this same symptom. He let it sit much longer than I had. Nothing happened for him. Assuming the system was stuck in a rut, I powered off the console and powered it back on. While I waited for it to boot, I read what ended up happening to that man. Jamie knows this part.
God damn.
They really should put the warnings before. As if some kind of Hollywood-styled slow-motion train wreck, my eyes winded, and as I read, I powered off the system and tried to turn it back on, but nothing happens. I can't even go into safe mode anymore. The other hard drives won't work either. It's bricked, he wrote. I blacked out for a brief moment as I saw flashes of the world-shattering rage blinding my vision. The hallucinations quickly subsided, as I'm a firm pacifist, and nothing in this world till now, has ever gotten me angry other than my own family. I fumbled out of my seat and ran to my system in an attempt to do damage control. Nothing doing. The other hard drives would get me to safe mode, but they would just black screen after selecting an option. Once again, I took my PS3 back to the mother-licking computer store and asked them to take a look at it and expedite if they could. They called me up 6 hours later and said that the hard drive inside it was failing. After we exchanged a few words, I determined that I forgot to put the 500GB hard drive back into the system before giving it to him. I was troubleshooting it with the lower 80GB beforehand. He said that he was saying that the 80GB stock model was failing, and I redirected him to the proper drive. He tested it while I was on the phone, and he told me it was looking good and thanked me and then got back to work. 2 hours later, he called me up saying that it was fixed. I got it home, plugged it in, and sure enough, it was fixed, but still needed to be reformatted in order to get the data transfer. I was a little gun-shy though. I mean, how would you react if your system got bricked when you followed the manufacturer's instructions to the letter? Anyway, I reformatted it successfully and began the data transfer back from the old back to the old trusty system from the loud noise-inducing system. In the meantime, I called up the game store that I bought the system from. I spoke with the owner and explained everything that had happened to me. I begged him to see what he could do about giving me a refund for the 2nd generation model that I bought nearly a year ago. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention that? It's now May 2017 by this point. Anyway, the owner listened to my story. I've been a very loyal, frequent customer in the store for over 10 years. Even when I moved most of my gaming purchases to the internet to save money, I still made most of my biggest purchases at his store. Hell, at one point I was able to pay their heating bill single-handedly with the amount of money I was spending. So he cut me a deal. He said that he'd take it back, but he'd only issue me a refund for the value of what the system's worth now, which was $95. And I was like, holy shit, a 95% refund? Sign me the fuck up. So I finished transferring all my data back to my old system and got my refund for the new one. The store made out like a fucking bandit because I gave it back to them in better condition than they sold it to me in. Plus, I was just going to reinvest my refunded money into a slim model. You know, make it smaller at least, you know. I figured, even if I can't get it to be a PS2 compatible console, at the very least, I can get a smaller PS3 to make room in the entertainment center for a PS4. So it was done. The cursed Tiki PS3 was now back with the store, and I was home free with Sony's version of what they think consoles would look like if they were on Weight Watchers. I was like, with all the terrible shit that's been happening to me, I better make another backup. Lord knows, I might lose all my save files or something, lol. I was trying to be funny. I wasn't trying to tempt fate. I needed to be able to make jokes about my piss poor situation, otherwise I would have thrown everything out the window by this point. Literally. So I plugged in the external to begin the backup. It gets to about 2%, then fails. I tried a second time. Failed again. At this point I was laughing maniacally, wondering what else life had in store for me. Well, life was about to put my fucking balls in a deathly vice grip. Get ready, because here comes the finale. A quick Google search revealed that this was the sign that my hard drive had some corruption on it. The file system would need to be restored. Now, before you gasp, restoring the file system does not erase your data. It simply brings the PS3 back to a properly functioning state. So before shutting the system down to boot back into safe mode, I had one last fleeting thought. Maybe I should back up some of my save files to a flash drive. This might be the last time I see the PlayStation screen. Nah, it'll probably be fine.
I'm watching a train wreck in slow motion.
I forgot how funny this story is. Oh, it'll probably be fine. Famous last words. You can guess where I'm going with this. If you're about to cry, I don't blame you. Anywho, I boot it into safe mode and do what Papa Sony asks of me. I select... Oh my god, I'm getting dizzy reading this. I select restore file system. Restore file system option. So it does its thing, but it takes a suspiciously long time. It usually only takes a couple of minutes tops. Now, an hour passes. 2, 3. It gets to 48% and then starts to speed up and gets to the end. I breathe a sigh of relief. A little too preemptively. The system reboots and delivers onto me a soul-crushing finishing blow, topped with a middle finger garnish. Upon booting back up, it gives me that the system is corrupt. Click OK to restore. Yada yada. Any PS3 owner knows that this message looks scary, but it's actually quite harmless. It quickly pops up when you power the system off unexpectedly. So I click OK, and it goes right back to the file system restore screen. I wait another 3 hours for it to finish again. Boots back up, and then comes back to that system is corrupt. Click OK to restore. It was in that exact moment, that my life began to move in slow motion. I could feel the hairs raising on the back of my neck as I came to the realization that I was royally fucked. If my console couldn't get out of this infinite loop, there was no way I could access the installs or save files housed within the hard drive. I had no choice but to erase the entire disk to get this system back to working order again. So I did a complete system reset. I lost everything. My whole life, gone. All my playthroughs with all 3 Borderlands with this guy, gone. Dragon Ball Xenoverse, gone. Portal 2, gone. Everything that I've ever played on that system, gone. Hang on, I need a moment.
Everyone press F for respects.
I'm reliving this.
Press F to pay respects, everyone.
I figured, well, at least I can re-download my purchases and then back them up and start fresh. Optimism? Happiness? Life did not authorize this! So upon wiping my hard drive like a sacrificial goat to the slaughter, the system returned to normal. I then had to spend the next 4 days downloading and installing all the games from the PlayStation Store. All of them. I told you, I have a lot of games. I soon discover that you can only have like 30 downloads in your queue at a time, so I keep it running even when I'm at work. Finally, it's done. I shut it off with plans to create a backup tomorrow. After coming home from work the next day, I power the thing on, only to find out it's corrupted again. 4 days worth of downloads and installs. Remember all that time you spent? Yeah, fuck you, Merce. It's gone again. I tried some more troubleshooting and swapped out the hard drives and everything. I was getting mixed results. I took out the hard drive that once contained my whole life on it and left the other 500 gigabyte hard drive in the system. So I slid the hard drive into a protective slipcover and brought it to, you guessed it, the local computer store. Perhaps it was destiny that this was the very hard drive that I purchased from them just months prior. You remember that one, right? The 7200 RPM one? The brand new one that I bought it from them? I'll never forget what happened to me after that. It was on that sunny morning, 8 a.m. on a Sunday. The store owner took my hard drive behind his counter and ran a test on it. He came back with a look on his face that made me turn pale white. Just from looking at the hard drive, he was able to deduce a lot. My life was over. He said that the device that this hard drive was plugged into had damaged SATA connectors, and that the system would cause permanent, irreversible damage to any drive that system came into contact with. In other words, the trusty old PS3 of mine just became a trusty old death trap for hard drives. I suddenly realized that my only other 500 gigabyte hard drive was plugged into my PS3 at home. After making a mental note to remember to Google how to slit your wrists, I asked how much it would cost to repair the SATA connectors. He said it's a motherboard issue. There's no fixing it. In other words, my PS3 was a barely functioning, rampaging hard drive killer. It would play games, sure, but it would render the memory storage as corrupt as at any moment, any random moment. I just wanted to jump out a window. Remember how I said that the metal plate scrapes when you slide it in because I had a hard time with the screw? I think it's safe to assume that I can blame that for the damage to the SATA connectors. Now, this would be the end of my story, except, oh wait, you thought we were done? Oh, fuck you, we're never done. So I needed a new hard drive. Since my Gen 3 model had ate up and shat out the only 2 units I had that could hold my games, I ordered one off the internet to use with the new Slim model. It arrived a week later. I began the final task of installing it, and once again downloading all my games. Admittedly, this part was totally my fault. So the downloading process takes about 2 days, as I have 30 games left to go, and it gives me the friendly little, you do not have enough memory to download this. Like I said, I know this story is funny and all, but I've already seen how it ends, and just writing it makes me want to flip a desk. So I was like, fucking blasphemy. As I went to the system information and checked the size of the hard drive, where it said 80 gigabytes. I looked up at my bookshelf where my now dead hard drives were just chilling, and I was like, oh, no. I stood up and walked over. Sure enough, I installed the wrong fucking hard drive. I must have mixed them up when I was installing, because my new one was still in its protective seal and not even open yet. So, as life's one last final fuck you, I had slid that hard drive into the system and downloaded everything all over again. There. That was the end of my story, kind of. Now, I had some time to become acquainted with my Slim, and I noticed a couple other things that bugged me. I'm wondering if anyone else has had this issue, because none of the other PS3 models I've seen it do this. When the Slim model is not in need of the hard drive, it stops spinning. I mean, that's fine and all, but every time you have to do something, it requires that it starts spinning again, and creates a momentary delay with anything that I do. I can only assume that will carry over from menu navigation into actual gameplay. Even more annoying, the range of the Bluetooth seems drastically smaller than the fat models I was using. Oh well. On that note, if I hadn't wanted the 3-in-1 Gen 2 PS3 model so badly, I could have just solved all my problems and avoided all this heartache if I just bought a bigger surge protector. As they do make them bigger now. If you were keeping track of this story and you have been reading this whole thing, holy crap, you're a superstar, and I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you have been paying super close attention, you'll know that the total price tag of this little life lesson has been $235 plus the difference for the slim model. If you have been recording that information and calculated correctly, you get automatic bragging rights in the comment section in every single one of my videos from this day forth. Anyway, enjoy the rest of the show.